Okay, I always have students that always ask me, how do I create a drop-down list in my navigation bar? So what I want to do is I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to create a navigation bar. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have a link here that will say About. And what I'm going to do is when I bring my mouse over that About, it's going to drop down basically a section, and it's going to have two links to two different pages. And so I'm going to start brand new with my section. I'm going to go in and work with it and then basically design the drop-down list entirely with CSS. Now the key here is once you get the structure set up in the first place, it's all about styling for that purpose. So if I go in, you can see up here, I'm going to refresh here, I have home, shop, blog, and contact. And what I want to do is I want to take a look in my index page, because what I do here, I'm going to have to change it on other pages as well. And as you can see here, it's a simple nav section, and in the nav section I have anchor tags that go to the home, shop, blog, and contact. By default, anchor tags usually have that underline, so we're going to remove that. It has the blue text, the purple if you visited the link, so we're going to change that as well. So we want to format it so it fits our color scheme for our website. So I'm going to be creating this from scratch, and really what I'm doing is I'm starting brand new basically. Okay, now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make that section for the About area. Now when I do this, I'm going to be using div tags. So I'm going to have it on the second link down, and I'm going to create a div called class equals dropdown list or dropdown. Okay, and this basically is going to control the section that we have for the flyout for the drop-down list itself. Now the first thing we need to do is we're going to add a button. The button is basically going to indicate a trigger that flyout. So we need something that triggers that flyout, and that's the button. Does a great job. The problem with the button, though, it's not going to match up with your formatting. So we're going to have to do a lot of formatting to match it up perfectly. And so we're going to give this a class name. Okay, and in between here we're just going to label it About. Now I just want to show you what it looks like real quick. See how the About button, and then it throws off my navigation bar. So we have a lot of things we got to do. We got to format this so it doesn't physically look like About or a button, and that it formats it to the text to look like our navigation bar. So we have a lot of, a couple more styling aspects to do. So after the button tag, inside the parent div tag, we're going to put another div tag, and we're going to give it a class name because this is going to be your drop down list. Okay, and inside here, this div tag will be the other list of anchor tags that you're going to list to the other pages. So here I have two links, one going to the About page, one going to Classic Toys. Okay, so this here is inside the parent container called dropdown. Now again, if you're looking at this as we go, then the issue you have here is you're going to see all these links, and again, we got to spend time on formatting. That's our big part. So first thing we want to do is we want to make sure the links are side by side. So, and then we're going to format this and making sure the text looks correct and all like that looks good for this website. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a section to the anchor tag. I'm going to tell it to float left. Now you can work with display inline as well, and I have a font family set up based on my website, making the text all uppercase letters, and I'm going to make the font weight bold, And of course, I'm changing the font size. I'm changing my color scheme to match my color of my website. So I'm changing the anchor tag to be a certain color, and I'm adding a little extra padding, so that way to the left and right of it there's some extra padding. Now you might need to add a little, at the top and bottom. So that also is something you could do right there. The text decoration none is going to remove the underlines. Now, let me delete this real quick, and let me show you. Now, what's going to happen is this about button is a separate section, so it's not going to line up perfectly. So that is the reason why we need to also tell the div tag to float left of what our items that we're working with. And when we do that, then it's going to be side by side. Now, it's not going to look perfect yet because we still got to apply formatting. So if I go back in and I refresh my page, you'll see that there's the home tag, there's a big space here, there's about, shop, blog, and so forth. So now we're getting closer, but we still got to spend more time on styling. So what I want to do, and again, I'm just going to keep adding here to the style, put all my nav sections together and so forth. And I want to spend time on making sure the font and the font size of the button is taken care of. So one of the things I'm going to be doing is there's a border around the button. I'm going to take that away. I'm going to change the font size, add a little extra padding, and probably work with the color as well. Okay, so in this case, we're going to be using the Sentence Selector here. Tell it to go to the drop down, look at the drop button. And first of all, it's kind of matching, it's going to match up here. For example, if I type in font size 16 pixels, it should match exactly, right? And we definitely want the font family to be used up here because we want to match the exact family itself. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy this down. And that's the beauty, is that no need to type if you're going to be using the same styling, and you have to add it to the button because it is a different element for that. Now I'm just going to add one little item here. I'm going to say outline none, just so you can see what it looks like. I still have a couple other styles to apply here. Okay, so you can see here it's about the right font size and so forth, but we still have some issues. So I'm going to change the color of the text, and actually the color of text should match this, and really the padding is going to match this as well. And I'm going to use a command called background color inherent. What that's going to do is it's going to take whatever's in the nav section, which happens to be white, and incorporate that into the child element. We're also going to go in and especially with outline, we also have to change the border to be none because there is a consistent border around the button. Okay, so background inherent, most people don't think about it this way. Take whatever's in the parent container, bring that down. So let's just take a look at this. And all of a sudden, that button is no longer, it looks like a navigation bar. Now we have this issue over here. I'm going to correct these issues later with the spacing. So let's just go ahead and continue on here. So again, notice it's a button, but it looks like our navigation. So I want to make sure that the about button is distinguishable. So I'm going to go in and I want to change the formatting so when I bring my mouse over the button, it changes color so that people know that there's a hover effect. And so to do so, it actually is really simple to do. I'm going to go in and I'm going to apply a couple different styles here. I'm going to change the background color, and the background color I'm going to change it to is my color scheme, which is this blue color, and I'm going to make it white text, make it easy to read. And as you can see here, I'm going in, I'm doing a:/hover, and then I'm doing drop down, going for the drop down div section, hover, and applying that background color and so forth. And so in that regards, if I come back in and refresh, now I just want to point out that it is actually going to apply, the way I've set it up is that it's going to apply it to everything here. So you bring your mouse over it, you're over that navigation bar. Now if you just want over about, okay, that makes sense, you could do that, but I prefer, that's the reason why you see here saying a:/hover, that it's going to go over every anchor tag in the nav section, and also I'm including it over the drop down list as well. So you're going to have to include both. Now if you just did drop down hover, it just does the drop down, just FYI. Now what we need to go in and do is we need to hide these two links. Okay, the reason why is when I bring my mouse over about, I want these two to show. Okay, so we're going to add a style that is affecting drop down content. Okay, so back in my style sheet, I'm going to have drop down content. First thing I'm going to do is display none. That changes it, and again, when we look at it, that's not the only style we're going to add into this, but what we want to do is we want to make sure that's hidden. Now because I want it to appear below, I have to turn on some positioning. So I'm going to turn on position absolute, and then I'm going to have to control, what I want to do is, you got to remember, this div tag is like a container. Okay, so think about a rectangle around your links. So what I want to do is I want to format that to look different. So it should have like a background color, maybe you add a box shadow, and so forth. So I'm going to make sure it kind of stands out. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to do a background hyphen color, and again, you don't want it transparent because then the text, you just won't be able to read it. I'm going to make it a light gray color, and then I'm going to set the min width so that way the section, the nav itself is a minimal width, so it is not too small where it cannot be read, and that's usually a problem on some some websites. And here I'm also going to add a little box shadow, which kind of just a very distinguishable around the div container itself. And again, it's going to offset it, and the 16 pixel blurring it. And we use you can use hexadecimal values to add the color. A lot of times you use RGBA because that fourth value is opacity. So RGBA allows you to choose a color and make it transparent. Now the big part of this is the z-index, because the z-index controls the layering, and depending on how many objects you have on the page, the higher the z-index number is going to be on the topmost layer. So what you need to know is you need to have a high value. A lot of times in web designers and graphic designers, when they create a website like this, what they'll do is they'll put in 1000. And reason why is they don't know how many objects they have on their page. So when they say 1000, they know that's going to be at the very top. You're not going to have 1000 objects usually on your page, but when we say 1000, we know it's going to be at the top. Okay, now you're not going to see anything yet. Because if I come in and I refresh my page, the only thing I'm going to get is the about. So I need to now, when I bring my mouse over it, I need to go in and do I need to have it show. and then I also need to format some of the text inside it as well, and we'll see that. Now to show it, we just use the display property, because right up here we have display none. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell it when we bring our mouse over it, so over our drop down, hover, and then the drop down content we want to display. We're going to display as a block. When we display as a block, it allows us to, it has a box model, allows us to apply padding, margins, borders if we need to. So it kind of almost looks like a button. Now again, when I refresh my page, okay, now you can see here it's going side by side. So we want to change that. We're going to change that so it's not going side by side. And if I click on this, it should take me to classic toys and about and so forth. So it should be working at this point, but we still got some styling to do. So we're going to, first thing I want to do is I want to control the content that's in the anchor tag. Okay, it by default is actually floating side by side. Why is it floating side by side? It's this information that we have up here where we have float. So we're going to tell it not to float itself. So here I'm going to tell it to look at my drop down content A, and I'm going to say float none. Now it's not the only style I'm going to be applied. You got to remember, just like with any navigation bar, you might want to make some other changes to it. Now we still, oops, I still have to do one more thing to this. And what I have to do is I have to make this anchor, which is an inline element, into a block. Once I make it in a block, it's actually going to add an extra, it's like a return. It adds space above, below, on the left and right hand side, and allows you to go again, have borders, margins, and padding. So when I do this, let's refresh the page now. You're like, see how that works? And then the text align right now, I have it lined differently. I have it lined right. So let's add some other other styles there to kind of get it formatted the way we want. So we'll override the text align. We'll make it text align left, right? I think there was there. Well, let's save this real quick and let's look at it one more time. There we go. Oh, there we go. Now it's left. And again, whatever you want to format, maybe you don't want, maybe you want to change the styling, maybe you want to add more padding. Okay, so a lot of times you want to add a little extra padding in between. So what I'll do here is I'll add padding on top and bottom, left and right. See, there's extra space in between, so it's easier to read. Okay, so maybe you want to change the text color, maybe you want to change the styling. That's all up to you, and you just add it to the anchor tag. Okay, so you might not want that blue color to be over top of this. Okay, you might not want that. So then what you do is you tell it to go to your drop down content and you look at your anchor tag, and the anchor tag you're going to be looking at is the hover effect, the pseudo element, and you just go in and you just basically change the background color. Now again, you might like it that color, you might want to change it up so it's distinguishable. So as you can see here, then it's gray, but the text is harder to read because it's the white text. and you get the idea.